This country was built on a distinctly American work ethic, but today, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, and with that, we sent away good jobs and diminished our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make a variety of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more. All made right here in the USA, from growing the cotton and adding the final touches. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs for seamsters, cutters, and factory workers in towns and cities across the United States. And it's about more than an income. Jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
I'm not saying that if you change your diet that you're going to improve all aspects of your life, because it doesn't happen that way. But it's definitely a doorway to self-love, because once you commit to that, then you may have the energy or the inclination to dig a little bit deeper. How do you want to interact with the world? I'm a firm believer that we don't have a purpose other than just to be, and to be ourselves and express ourselves. And that is different for every single human being that's on the planet. We don't need to change the planet. We just need to change ourselves, and the rest will flow.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast, brought to you by AmpCoil. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show, we discuss the common thread survivors share after walking through the fire, the practitioners making a difference, and the treatment modalities that deliver healing back into the hands of the people who need it most. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. Today, our guest is Pete Evans, who is an internationally renowned chef, restaurateur, author, and television presenter. His passion for food and living a healthy lifestyle inspires individuals and families around the world. Now, his recent project is the award-winning documentary, The Magic Pill, which shows the impact food can have on people's health, and it's now on Netflix. You've got to check that out if you haven't seen it. Now, Pete has also been co-host and judge of Australia's #1 television show, My Kitchen Rules, for 9 seasons, and he has hosted and produced 2 seasons of the Paleo Way, which sees Pete creating non-inflammatory dishes. Oh my God, a man after my own heart. And he also hosts an award-winning PBS series, Moveable Feast. Pete Evan, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
Pete, I got to ask you right off the bat, where do you find the time to put together all those projects?
They're sort of just, you know this, Freddie. You just manifest your reality of what you want to do, and off you go. So
you do. You do.
We're masters of creation of our own destiny. So I do the things that I love to do. And I mean, it sounds like a lot of a lot of stuff when you say it in that introduction, but to me, it's just day-to-day living and doing the things that I really, really enjoy doing, which is learning, which is sharing, which is teaching, which is learning more, realizing I don't know anything, and then going back and trying to understand more about it, and then sharing that information, and then it's that circle and cycle of life of being curious and doing the things that resonate with you, you know, and what resonates with me is very different than what resonates with other people, and that's what makes this a wonderful world. We all have that intelligence to create and imagine the life that we wish to explore, and there's no rule.
Yeah.
There's no rules, even though a lot of people seem to want to put rules onto us. So
of course.
You know, I'm definitely one for not conforming to mainstream rules.
Yes, I've heard that. We're definitely going to get into that. So So I want to just jump in here. So you've started, you were put on this path, this quest for elite foods that make the body strong, foods that heal, this better way of living. How did this pain to power scenario start? Like, what was the impetus? Was there a day? Was there a moment in your life you're like, I know things could get better. I know things could be better. What was it?
No, I think we all have that inkling in us and that understanding that, perhaps the path that we're on at the moment may not be the wisest for us. Sometimes we don't know which paths to take. Sometimes we just go with the flow, and sometimes they're actually dictated for us. And other times we have to find them out ourselves. And I guess there wasn't one particular point in time that it was like I had the aha moment. I'm still having the aha moment each and every day. So I always say it's been a lifelong journey of discovery, and it still is. The moment you think you've got it worked out, watch out.
I know.
Something will come along and go, really? You think you've got it worked out, do you? Well, let's see how well you've got it all worked out then.
Yeah, the universe usually laughs when you tell it what your plans are.
Yeah, we're quite lucky in Australia. We've got these beautiful native birds called kookaburras, and if you've ever heard a kookaburra laugh, it's pretty wild. It is wild. They're wild birds, and they call it kookaburra laughing, and I hear them a lot, and I generally hear them when I'm having some pretty deep thoughts of my own about about which path to take, about what I want to do, about my perception of this world that we live in. And as soon as I'm getting deep and dark and down with it, all of a sudden the kookaburra will do its laugh. I'm like, yeah, fuck, okay.
Yeah, it sort of brings you back to baseline.
Well, it's like, what are you trying to figure out, mate? Really, what are you trying to figure out? How to live? How to make the world a better place? You think you're capable of that? What is that? Is that your ego? Is it, dig a little deeper? What is it that you actually want to do? For me, I just want to be a human, understand, connect, love, let go, surrender, grow, decay, all that, everything that comes from that, embrace it all, embrace the dark, embrace the light, deal with the frustrations that do pop up, and try to go with the flow and try not to get caught up in your own bullshit, which is pretty difficult at times, I tell you. And that's when the kookaburra comes along and says, you know what? Don't get too caught up. So
I love it. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful little pup. Yeah. Serenity in that dog's eyes and their heart. And they're just such healers when we have animals around us.
So to answer your question, not really one pivotal moment, but lots of different ones that have accumulated to where we are now. So, but definitely the food path has been probably one of the most eye-opening ones for me. My wife was reading a book by Nora Gagaudis called Primal Body, Primal Mind about 8 years ago. And she said it was a fantastic read, and maybe I'd like to read it because she knew I was interested in health and nutrition. And I read that. It made so much sense. And I guess the rest of my food journey has the last 8 years have been focused on those principles, which seem to be working for me and a hell of a lot of other people. But prior to that, I'd been cooking professionally for nearly 25 years. So at the cornerstone of my foundation was real food, delicious food. And now I've been able to join those dots from being a chef with, I guess, nutrient-dense foods and what it means to cook an anti-inflammatory meal for myself and my family, and sharing those recipes with many others, and interviewing the people, the doctors, the scientists, the researchers, the naturopaths, the dietitians, the people, the athletes, the public, the people that are getting long-term sustainable results from eating this way. And it's, for me, there's enough evidence from my own N=1 approach that this style of eating works for me. So, and from the thousands and thousands of people who I've shared stories from, it works for them as well. Whereas it seems like the funny thing is, changing a diet seems to be the last resort for so many people. And it's, why wouldn't it be one of the first tools we use as prevention? And we're all on our separate journeys. I didn't know this 20 years ago. I didn't know it 30 years ago. And I'm constantly evolving and understanding more about how it all works. And for anyone this might be new, that you've never heard this term before, anti-inflammatory approach, then, this may work for you. There's no guarantees, because true health is multifaceted. It comes down to our belief systems, our core belief systems. It comes down to our programming of how we view the world, how we see it, how we participate in this dance of life. The most basic and common sense aspects of what it means to be alive. And, it comes down to, how do we sleep? It comes down to, how do we move? It comes down to, how do we interact with ourselves and with others? How do we interact with the data or the food and the beverages that we put into our system? How do we deal with these modern day technologies that may be causing us some imbalances? How do we deal with these new ways of living as a human being that are very, very new to us, where we generally as a society sit around and look at a screen now?
Yeah, we've truly designed this new paradigm for ourselves, and I think we're all trying to find our footing in some way or another. Primal body, primal mind was my way in.
Oh, really?
It was the book. I read Nora's book, and right away I bought 4 copies. I gave it to my dad, gave it to my mom, gave it to everybody. You guys got to read this book. This is amazing. This is amazing. Can you go in for the audience who might not know, just maybe some of your core beliefs around, or the pillars of what you consider to be a healthy diet, a healthy food paradigm, however you want to phrase it?
Yeah, we summed it up in the film, The Magic Pill. As you said, it's on Netflix, it's on Amazon, it's on iTunes. The crux of it, the real message of it is, and I have to owe this to Tim Trudgeon, who is one of the founders of Hope for Health, which is a charity that we support up in Arnhem Land for the Indigenous of Australia. And we have a thing at the end of the film when the credits are rolling: if you want to donate, if you want to help, then please donate to this charity. But Tim summed it up perfectly. He said, basically, it's about eating meat and vegetables. That's what the film was about. And I've said it before on podcasts. I said, I feel that it's very strange for me to even make a film with that as the premise, that it seems such common sense. But in 2018, there were no films out there that actually promote that way of eating. There seems to be a lot of films out there that promote a very different way of eating, which may be causing people long-term sustainable health problems. So I felt compelled to be able to put a different narrative out there that really is about that if we're human beings, and the definition of a human being is an omnivore, and the definition of an omnivore is that our diet should consist of animal and plant-based material, then let's actually explore that. What does that mean? So that's why we film with the Indigenous. That's why we talk about evolutionary history. It's why we talk about the food charts or the healthy eating paradigms that are in our curriculum, in our schools, in our hospitals, in the Western world, where they aren't based on science. They aren't based on actual facts on how to eat a non-inflammatory way. If you were to choose to eat that way, there is a very high chance that you will suffer disease if you eat as our authorities promote. And that's a challenging concept for so many people, because they put their faith into mainstream. They put their faith into the authoritative organizations and figures. They want to put their trust into someone else to take accountability for their own actions. So I'm a firm believer that we need to take responsibility. We need to take accountability for every single part of our lives. And that includes what we put into our mouths. So I come at it from a very basic human approach. Humans equals omnivores equals animals and plants into our system. Fucking simple.
Yeah, simple.
It's so simple. It is so simple. you can then dissect that into, okay, well, if we're going to eat animals, what's the best source of animal protein and fats for us? And I would say the ones that have been unadulterated through our modern tampering, and at the moment that would be wild game, it would be wild seafood, and hopefully we can get sustainable long-term fisheries and ways of doing that. And if not, then the next best thing I see is pasture-raised herbivores, such as cattle and sheep and goat, for instance. That to me seems like the purest form of food on the planet, except for indigenous native foods that have been non-hybridized. I've got some native trees growing in my backyard here, and we pick the fruits off there. And if you were to give them those fruits to people that think they understand what fruits are, these are non-sweet fruits. They're called lily pillies or rye berries, and they're very high vitamin C, and they're quite sour. So if we dig a little bit deeper, we can look at the plant world and see exactly what is actually the most intact forms of plant products or ingredients that we have that haven't been tampered with by human ingenuity, and then I would say local, organic, seasonal at the very least, and then possibly native, or indigenous that haven't been tampered with, and if you can basically mimic that and put that onto your plate at every meal, I think you've got your nutrition bases covered. Some people obviously need to tweak it. We have bio-individuality, and some people can have problems with garlic, for instance, or leek, or onions, or nuts, or nightshades. So, you have to work it out. But I think if you bring it back to a very basic template of animals in their natural habitat and fruits and vegetables and plants in their natural habitat, I don't think you can go too wrong. And I think it's as simple as that. And then tailor it to your taste buds and resources and availability and budget.
Yeah, I love it. I really believe in that tail to snout. I usually have a bone broth growing weekly. There's usually a cup in the morning, and that's just part of life. And I've probably done that for 2 years. It's just part of the jam, and it's just I try to access every part of the animal. As like you were saying, there's a ways to look at it. It's like, what's healthy? Well, what's healthy for you? What's healthy for the planet, for the community? And just the idea that you can take every part of that animal and turn it into nourishing energy for you, so you go forward, and it's like that perfect cycle of life is perpetuated through that behavior.
And I think we as humans we complicate things so much. We really do.
Mm-hmm.
We really do. Even with recipes that I've shared, and it's like, what about quinoa, or what about this, or what about that? I'm like, well, you can include it if you like. It tastes pretty crap, but and even with the vegan vegetarian movement, and that's cool. I've experimented with that for many years, like 25 years ago, and it didn't work for me. And it works for some people. But again, are we complicating ourselves and detaching ourselves from what it means to be human in the cycle of life? And are we getting too caught in our egos about what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad, instead of really just surrendering to who we are and where we've come from and what is really going to support us moving forward as a species? I think a lot of people can go forth on a vegetarian vegan diet, and some people can thrive on it and survive quite well. But what are the thoughts about the coming generations? Has that been taken into consideration? And I think it's really important that people ask themselves that question. And you can hear my dog wanting to shout that out too. She's like,
just get into the conversation.
Yeah, just really look at what it means to be a human being, and you will find all the answers. I have the belief that we have our extreme intelligence in us, and we have all the answers to all our questions. We don't need to find a guru. We don't need to find a therapist. We don't need to find anybody. The only person we really need to find is ourselves. And if we sit with ourselves and actually have a deep dive as often as we can into ourselves and ask ourselves the questions: who am I? What am I? How could I be bringing myself back into balance a little bit more or a lot? The answers are there. You know the answers.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up because this is a common theme, and it's come up with a few guests that is a lost skill. Where do I go for the answers? Do I, you go to a teacher, or you go to a book, or you go to a webinar or a podcast, but we never stop and ask, like, wait a minute, you can almost put your hand on your heart and be like, what do I really want right now in this moment? And you're probably going to get a ping from your own body saying yes or no, but that's a lost skill.
Well, there's a lot of fear that's involved in that, because you may challenge your belief systems. You may need to change the way that you look at yourself and your participation with the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And that can frighten the shit out of people. It really can. The old saying that the greatest fear is of our own potential. And I mean, I think that's why I probably cop a lot of crap and flack from certain areas of certain corners of the globe, is because it's very easy to cast stones at somebody that's standing up tall, rather than casting stones at yourself to see where you may wish to change. And I'm not saying we're all perfect. We are all perfect exactly as we are. Do we have to change? I'm not sure. Do we want to change? I'm not sure. That's a question you need to ask yourself. And it's a question that I often ask myself. If I've got a challenging situation, what does this mean to me? Is it an opportunity to grow? Why has this come around to me again? I thought I'd dealt with this. I thought I'd dealt with this one. I thought I'd moved on.
Isn't it funny how those patterns repeat?
Uh-huh. And it takes a bit of courage and to analyze those things and to dig a little deep.
For this audience, we have a lot of people listening that are cancer survivors and survivors of Lyme disease, chronic illness, or going through that process right now. And there's so many different theories on there, especially when you get into this under the microscope of, how is food going to heal me? Because it becomes a very complicated conversation. When you're dealing with a level, well, maybe it's a microbe, maybe it's a tumor, maybe it's an emotional body that you just haven't been able to let go of. Do you think, what do you think the limitations are of food, or I guess that's kind of a crappy question. It's like what part of the puzzle does that fit in?
Personally, I see food as the easiest one that we can change today. I really see that food is the gateway, I believe, for self-love.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. Personally, through my own perception and experience, I would say that 99% of all illness is emotionally related. That's my perception, and people might think that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I could even say maybe 100%. But let's leave a little room in there for people.
Let's give them 1%.
Yeah. So I believe that everything is to do with our core belief patterns and belief systems that we have. And disease will flow from that. Now, you could look at that in a way that, why would we go and poison ourselves with certain foods? Why would we go and poison ourselves with certain beverages? Why would we poison ourselves with certain medications? Why would we poison ourselves with certain approaches to life? And I'll bring that back to self-love. And I think we so many of us live in fear and craving that self-love and acceptance and surrender to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And generally what I say to people is, you have a choice. Every single day you make choices. What time are you going to go to bed? Who are you going to spend time with? What are you going to do through this day? How are you going to communicate with yourself and to others? What are you going to eat? What are you going to drink? Are you going to go outside and experience nature? Are you going to get some of that sun onto your skin? Are you going to spend a little bit of time to yourself doing something that you love? Are you going to spend a lot of time doing something that you love? And I don't know how many people actually think about those choices consciously and aware of how powerful each of those questions are. Really, like really deeply. And I see food as the easiest one for us to change. And even just that shift in, okay, I'm gonna change my diet. I'm gonna give this paleo thing a red hot go for the next 6 months. I'm gonna do it 100%. And then you'll have, as the universe always does, once you make that decision, generally it will test you. And you'll have friends, you'll have family, you'll read articles in a paper where they're saying the exact opposite. And are you crazy? Don't do that. That's got a crazy person as their spokesperson. You know,
Right.
All of these challenges will come up to test your conviction in every aspect of your life. You know, as we were talking about before, you think you dealt with something. It's like, are you committed to this? Let's just see how committed you are. And I always see food as the easiest one. But at any time anybody has spoken to me and said that they made the decision to change, they've said their husband was against them, their wife was against them, their brother or their sister or their work colleagues or their kids or their parents or society. They really challenged them. And then it's up to that person whether they want to actually, you know, do it or not. Then there's always the excuse generally of, well, I'm Italian by heritage. I couldn't possibly give up that. Or I'm French and, you know, I have to eat that. Or I'm Indian and this is how I was brought up. Or I'm this religion. Or I'm that. And I always bring it back. I go, you're a human being. You are a human being. Take away those labels. Take away those identities that you've adopted, whether it's religious, whether it's cultural, where you come from, because we come from the planet. We come from this long history of evolution of our species. You know, do you think 200,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago, anybody cared about what religion you were? What political party you followed? What? Any of that. Does any of that matter on the big scheme of things? Possibly. But how can that influence your position of being a human being, an omnivore, and what you're going to put into your mouth? And why should it matter to anybody else other than yourself for you to do that experiment? And do it in conjunction with a doctor so you can get your blood test done prior, during, after, so you can see tangible results if there are any, whether you improved certain blood markers, whether you improved certain levels of your health. And if it goes the other way, you know, sometimes when you adopt these things, you have a detox period or where things actually get elevated for the first month because you're dumping shit out of your body. So I'd say give it 6 months.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love the list that you gave of, you know, what do you drink? What do you eat? What do you sleep? The joy you spend, you know, the time you spend each day, the hours investing into that thing that makes your heart sing. And just that list, I'm going to go back and I'm going to write that down for everybody because those are, you know, they seem simple. But if you were to wake up and you were to look at that next to your bed every morning and that was the list you went through and you're like, yep. There's no way you wouldn't feel better in 6 months to a year. It's impossible. It's impossible. So I just think that's so empowering.
I've shared this. We've got a 10-week program that's for free. It's called the Paleo Way. It's been running for 4 or 5 years now. We've had 100,000 people do it. And guess how many people in that 5 years with today's way that people communicate on social media, guess how many people have said that they've done it and they haven't improved their health, that they actually got sicker? Over 5 years, 100,000 people. Do you have any idea of how many people have said, hey, Pete, that was really shit, or I actually got sicker from doing it? Zero. And I'm not saying that people haven't gotten worse from adopting it, but you would think in this day and age where people very freely express their viewpoints and their experiences, that at least I would have got one that would have said, you're crazy, brother. This actually, you know, my diabetes went from this to this, or my autoimmune went from this to this. And we're only talking about food here, even though my program talks about, we have meditation in there, we have different ways of looking at life as well. So it's multifaceted, and everything that we've spoken about today, we basically cover that, but it's really a food-based program. Yeah, none. But I've shared thousands upon thousands upon thousands of real life stories of people creating magic in their lives again.
Mm-hmm.
And that can never be underestimated, what happens when people feel good. And that's the joy of doing this, is the magic that happens when people are feeling fantastic. What are they going to do in the world? What are they going to change? How are they going to contribute to the world? You know, it could be as simple as growing their own food in their backyard. Imagine if everybody did that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just that one act of self-love and doing an activity outside of growing some herbs or raising some chickens or whatever it may be. What if that person now feels great and they go and volunteer at a nursing home or a children's hospital? And what if they share some recipes or philosophies that may just change another person's life? And that, to me, because I hear all these stories about people improving their own life, and I'm like, yeah, of course, yeah, I get it. It's not surprising. It's not miraculous anymore to me. It's by default what's going to happen generally. You know, I'm not saying that if you change your diet that you're going to improve all aspects of your life, because it doesn't happen that way. But it's definitely a doorway to self-love, because once you can change that and commit to that and you start to feel good, then you may have the energy or the inclination to dig a little bit deeper and think about, how do you want to interact with the world? You know, and I'm a firm believer that we do really know we don't have a purpose other than just to be, and to be ourselves and express ourselves creatively, energetically. And that is different for every single human being that's on the planet. We don't need to change the planet. We just need to change ourselves, and the rest will flow. So many people out there wanting to change it. Well, yeah, just change yourself if you want to.
Yeah.
You know, that's that, you know.
Oh man, it's hard. It's harder to look at yourself in the mirror every morning and ask that question that it might be able to push and try to move that boulder up the hill. Or, you know, we get caught up in the ego and what am I supposed to do and what am I supposed to build and what am I supposed to be? And you get lost. It's easy to get lost in that, but just you even saying that now, that resonates as a New Yorker, you know, that's just driven type A, that resonates with me. I'm like, I need to put that in the journal, and I need to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some people are driven to do great things, you know, and I'm not just diminishing that or dismissing that. I think that's fantastic if that is what you want to do.
Well, that could be their state of being. So that makes sense.
Exactly. You know, and there's probably a trigger for them as to why in their life, why they're compelled to do that. You know, it might be an injustice they witnessed or suffered. And for them, they need to have some sort of, I don't know, it could have impacted them deeply. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I love watching it, and I love watching, you know, I see it on social media a lot. And it's fascinating when I flick through there. You know, I'm like, whoa, that's an interesting thing that you just put up there. You know, and once you start to look and see the language that is used when people are expressing themselves, you can really see where they need the healing for themselves. You know, it feels like they're trying to inspire others. At the same time, it's really, you turn that around on yourself, maybe there's no need to do anything else than just be you. You know, I don't know. I'm probably going off on a tangent here, but
no, man, this is the good stuff. This is what you want to hear. It's real.
Yeah,
it's real. We've got to take that look. I want to ask you a few more questions here. So, you know, if we look at your life, if we look at, you know, the food you eat and the water and your care you take with your sleep, meditation, you get joy in your life. You're very committed to your work and your projects. Does like this concept of biohacking your biology or using some, you know, methodologies to recover better or, you know, be able to work a longer day. Does anything right now fit into your paradigm? Infrared saunas, fasting, cold water therapy, anything like that?
Yeah, all of the above. I'm curious by nature. I, I
Yeah.
really am. I love it. I love learning, and I
Yeah.
follow so many different ways of being and life, and I'm very, very curious about the biohacking. And biohacking simply can be just changing your diet, as we just said. It doesn't need to be a technological. I don't think a technological device.
No.
It doesn't. I'm cautious not to go too far down that rabbit hole as well, where I
Yeah.
detach from nature to have artificial devices that may prolong my life or may improve certain aspects of my life. Am I curious about these devices and technologies? Yeah, for sure. We by nature are intelligent beings, and our imagination is what creates these wonderful things. I mean, just the concept now that we are having this conversation. You're on one side of the planet, I'm on the other side of the planet. We're at different time zones. We're looking at each other in a screen, which is probably not great for us on certain levels. But how wonderful it is that we can have this conversation, and this is through the imagination of some very committed people, and I love it.
Yeah.
But this is a tool, and it can be misused. We can become addicted to this, and we can become addicted and misuse everything. I'm currently filming a documentary, my second one, on cannabis, and it's one of the most controversial plants in the world, I see. And I see it as a very powerful tool, and it can be used for greatness, can be used for physical, spiritual, and emotional well-being. But it can also be a tool that's misused as well, which can cause devastation to people's lives, if it's used in the wrong way. So, and I see technology as the same thing. I think it's a wonderful tool. It can connect people. It can save people's lives. It can prolong people's lives through modern technology. But I also see it as a tool that can be very misused. It can be used to create hate, to censor people. It can, at the moment we're seeing that censorship of free speech when it's not aligned with mainstream philosophies or thinking. We're seeing this happen, and it's a tool that can be misused. And with the biohacking thing, whether it's an infrared sauna, I think that could possibly be misused as well. It could be a powerful tool for people. Red light therapy, would I choose that over going out into the sun? No, I wouldn't. I'd actually rather watch the sunrise and the sunset than stand in front of a red light artificial machine. Did I stand in front of the red light artificial machine yesterday? Yes, I did. And I was connected to ozone therapy at the same time. And I was there for 15 minutes because I didn't actually get it to experience. I had a busy day yesterday. So I topped up, so to speak, and I had the time to do that. But, I have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber in our house that my wife's in now. We've both suffered head injuries over our time, and we understand at the moment, the science says hyperbaric oxygen chambers the evidence is pretty clear that they can help with severe brain injuries and potentially cause preventative measures for long-term brain health. Am I going to give that a go because I've suffered brain injuries? Yeah, because I've studied the effects and the science that says this is probably a good thing to include into your weekly regime. We have that, But here's the thing. If I was to use every single biohacking tool that I have currently, I wouldn't get to experience life. I wouldn't get to experience connection with my family. I wouldn't. I'd become this addicted personality, got to do this, got to do that, and you would retreat from the world. So I think, like anything, people can become obsessed with food, and count calories and count macronutrients. The whole ketogenic thing is fucking ridiculous. I just released a book to try to demystify it. And I say, I've never counted a carb in my life. I've never counted a calorie in my life. If you're counting your carbs down to the 17.5 grams of carbs per day in net carbs.
That really takes you out of the state of being, doesn't it?
And there's certain medical conditions that people may need to follow these types of strict.
Well, seizures and glioblastoma, even, there's certain type of cancers that respond very well, but that's a very small portion of the population.
But then, what are you missing by doing that? And does fear creep into your vocabulary if you have a sweet potato? What does that mean? I judge a cooking show. I'm a paleo advocate, keto, low carb, nearly a carnivore advocate these days, an anti-inflammatory. I judge a cooking show on television where I eat refined sugars, white flour, non-organic fruits and vegetables, factory-raised animals. It's 1% of my yearly diet. And I never have fear around whenever I'm ingesting that food, because it was a choice that I made consciously that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it. And I take digestive enzymes and a whole lot of stuff when I do it.
I mean, God bless your intestinal tract, because I don't have that, but I applaud yours.
And, we have the way that we can choose to live our lives. And people think I'm a hypocrite because I do that. I'm like, well, what does that mean for you? What does being a hypocrite mean for you? I never said that I do this 100%. And even if I don't do this 100%, how can what I do affect you? Seriously. How can it? It's just your perception of me. And at the end of the day, everyone that we meet is just a mirror for ourselves. We're all connected to the whole. So very careful when you put expectations onto other people, whether they're your gurus or your politicians or your sporting stars or your children or your parents. So many people put expectations onto the wrong target.
That rings so true for me, man. I know people are going to hear this interview and they're going to take a lot away from it. I just want to ask you a couple more questions just to close out. The Beautifully Broken podcast, for me, it was this idea that life is putting those fractured pieces back together. After we fall, we pick ourselves up. What does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
Well, that's life, isn't it? I mean, I said before, we don't really have a purpose. And let me rephrase that. Our one purpose is to remember who we are. That to me is the ultimate remembrance of who and what we are. And I've done quite a bit of work with different plant medicines over the years. And one thing that becomes very, very clear is that in those experiences, we get to remember who we are. And we are human spiritual beings capable of unconditional love. And we forget that as we go through this process of life, because we adopt these identities. Our identity develops like the layers of an onion, because the first time we've been told, we've experienced fear from our world, whether it's from our parents or our environment, we create the barrier, which becomes our identity, our fake identity, so to speak. We start to layer ourselves until, that's why I say we're so scared of our own potential, because our own potential is peeling off those layers and looking deep inside ourselves and knowing that we're beings of unconditional love. And when people are so removed from that experience, they don't know how to get back to that, or even if it exists for them, which is why there's so much judgment and jealousy and anger and frustration and blaming others for victimhood for our situation. And that's why it has to come back to personal responsibility and accountability for who we are, because there's no one that we can blame for who we are. There's no one, because we have created our own identity. No one's created it for us. No one. We have created it as a coping mechanism for this world that we've grown into. So beautifully broken is to remember who we are. And I don't know whether it's putting the pieces back together or just peeling our untruths away from ourselves. You can look at it however which way you like. But our default state of being is that of unconditional love and pure love energy. There is nothing else. There is nothing else. And all of this is an illusion. And once you have those experiences through these journeys of self-discovery that plant medicines do offer us, and plant medicine can be as simple as having a cup of tea. That to me is a plant medicine, and my wife and I do that every single day. Just before this today, we sat in silence for an hour and we had 6 bowls of tea together. And just before this, the kookaburra didn't land in front of me because I'm in Sydney at the moment, but a cockatoo landed right on the power line in front of me. And I'm going to go check out what cockatoo spirit animal means after this, because you fucker, there's something right there for me because it landed as we were having our meditation. And it'll be interesting because I haven't looked up what cockatoo means. And cockatoos are a native bird to Australia. Do you have cockatoos where you are?
Absolutely not.
Okay. It's a bit cheeky, cock or two, but it's a cockatoo. But so I'm going to look into that. But again, it's remembering who we are. And when we silence our dialogue, our egos, we get a glimpse of that. And that's where meditation comes into play. And people are trying to quieten their egos. They're trying to quieten the chatter. They're trying to quieten the identity. And for some reason, there are these amazing plants and animals that live on this planet that are a technology for us that we may wish to tap into that can accelerate that remembrance for us. And it's not for everybody, and I'm not recommending people do plant medicine, except maybe a cup of tea if you choose to. But there are more powerful ones, or I shouldn't say more powerful ones. There are different ones that can accelerate that for some people. And again, it's a powerful tool. It can be misused. It may not be for everyone. But for some, and in my instance, it was remarkably powerful for me to remember and to experience who we are. And that took me there. And it was challenging. It was exciting. It was frightening. It was beautiful. It was everything, because in some of these peak experience, you experience everything. And that's what we are. Everything. We're light, we're dark, we're every color between. And we've all experienced everything. So I think remembering that we are everything is very powerful.
That was so beautiful. So beautifully said, Pete. I just want to thank you so much. When can people expect your next documentary on cannabis?
When it flows.
Oh,
Again, no expectations. I don't know. All of these things that we create into this universe, I try to take the expectation out of anything. Generally, my one expectation or my one intention is that if one person gets to change their life through something that we share, and it might be a positive or negative way, who knows, then it's been worth it. So this will be out eventually when the time is right. In the meantime, check out the Paleo Way. It's a cooking series that's on Netflix and iTunes. There's 16 episodes there. And the Magic Pill, I think, is pretty cool introduction into this world. And at the basis of it, as I said, it's eating some good quality meat and seafood and some veggies if you choose. And it's not hard.
It's beautiful stuff. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on as a guest. People are going to just really jive with this show. I just honor you for being on, and thanks for doing all you're doing to move the planet forward. You're doing that, and that's just you being you, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I don't have all the answers, I'll tell you that right now. I'm going to go search up the cockatoo now, the kookaburra.
I love it. Namaste, my friend.
Hey, namaste too.
This episode of the Beautifully Broken podcast was brought to you by our lovely sponsor, Ampcoil. Guys, a heartfelt thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, if you found yourself moved and inspired, I would ask that your next stop today is to drop a review on iTunes. Nothing helps a movement like sharing, downloading, and spreading this message. You can follow me on Freddy Set Go on all social platforms, and throwing a screenshot and a favorite quote of your episode in your Insta story or on Facebook. That is the extra credit, next level engagement I am manifesting. So like these little ripples in a pond, your action helps connect this inspired information with the people who need it most. Till next time, I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel. This is the Beautifully Broken podcast. Namaste.
This country was built on a distinctly American work ethic, but today, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, and with that, we sent away good jobs and diminished our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make a variety of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more. All made right here in the USA, from growing the cotton and adding the final touches. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs for seamsters, cutters, and factory workers in towns and cities across the United States. And it's about more than an income. Jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
You have a vision for your business. Your priority might be to
expand facilities
or
bring in the best talent.
At Century Insurance, we listen, learn, and work to understand your business and your plans to help protect your
new locations.
As your business evolves and your vision comes true, Century, right by you. Property and casualty coverages and underwritten and safety services are provided by a member of the Century Insurance Group, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. For a complete listing of companies, visit Century.com. Policies, coverages, benefits, and discounts are not available in all states. See policy for complete coverage details.
The Quarter Pounder with Cheese had many great things. Maple-flavored griddle cakes isn't one of them. McDonald's breakfast comes first. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.